Hi there, I'm Jim, the owner of PureWave Audio and the Studio Edge Pro Audio Recording Series with 40 years of commercial sound engineering and mastering experience, plus a bachelor's in electrical engineering. I am dedicated to empowering professional and inspiring recording engineers. Stay tuned and let me guide you through the exciting world of pro audio recording. Today we are discussing DSP cards versus software plugins. Plugins are the lifeblood of a DAW system today. Not only are they way more convenient, but the options, number of instances, and overall quality now outweigh the use of some analog gear. Nowadays, you could get software plugins as native software only using the computer CPU, or as a software hardware DSP card combination, taking the load off of your computer. So which should you choose? The best way to answer this is to ask, which plugins do you like? Your sound is the most important factor in this decision. Using plugins that get you where you need to go is priority number one. Priority number two is DSP performance. In other words, is your computer DSP going to be bogged down by running software-only plugins? I think with today's computers, it's getting to be less of an issue. Priority 3 is portability. If you have a main tower system that you do all your recording on, but then you like to edit and start mixing on a laptop, obviously there are no PCIe slots in a laptop to add a DSP card. If you use your favorite DSP compressor on all your channels, then all your volumes are going to be wrong when you move over to a laptop system with these compressors in bypass mode. But you can use a Thunderbolt DSP device like the UAD satellite. So moving from desktop to laptop is not an issue at that point. Software-based plugins can use an iLock USB key for security to allow you to run the plugins, or even a proprietary security software that recognizes the hardware of your computer. If the software does not recognize the hard drive your OS is installed on, or possibly a BIOS chip of a specific computer part, it will not work. It becomes a little bit of an issue when your OS drive fails and you have to get a new one. Kind of jacks everything up. If you do have a USB key, it allows you to load the software on multiple computers and then just move the key between them when you want to use it on your computer of choice. I really want to thank you for supporting the channel, and if you're struggling in your recording endeavors, you probably need to really dig into the physics of sound, and you can learn this in detail with the Studio Edge Pro Audio Recording Series I created, specifically Volume 1, Studio Concepts, Gear, and the Physics of Sound. Now there's no sponsor for today's video. It is supported by those of you that have purchased my courses and purchased from PureWave Audio. Check the links in the description, and thank you for your support. Now, which ones should you buy? Well, the first thing I always tell my students is to not buy anything because someone told you to. Buy it because you gathered enough knowledge to know that you need it. So let's take a look at what I have. Keep in mind, I'm a 40-year veteran in the studio business, and I have a lot of stuff. Again, keep in mind that I have a lot of plugins. I have the Waves Mercury bundle, and what happens is when you buy a bundle like that, that's that huge, as time goes on, more plugins get developed and they get put into the bundle. So as long as you're doing your Waves update plan, you keep getting more plugins. So the reason I'm in WaveLab is because the way it's categorized in here is by manufacturer. And then in my other program, I got it categorized by actual function. So distortion, reverb, things like that. So I wanted to show you, like, here's all the different manufacturers I have. And as stuff flies out, like Waves, you know, there's 6. There's another, well, these are all, there's mono and stereo on all these, but I have, I mean, that's just dynamics. I have all these, and these, I actually own all these. These are all here. Multiband dynamics, there's another 10 or so. EQ, tons of EQ. And this is, again, just my Waves Mercury bundle. I don't have any other Waves besides the Mercury bundle. So just guitar, 10, mastering, tons of things. So I have all these things, and here's the other category, and there's just tons and tons of stuff. Now, the problem that I have is when you have this much stuff, you don't even know what's happening. And when they update it, nothing like throws it in your face to tell you that it actually exists. So you kind of forget that you even have any of this stuff. But that all being said, if we go to Steinberg, there's multiple delays, there's multiple distortions, tons of dynamics that are all different. You can see like Black Valve, that's going to be a distortion type compression, harmonic generator. There's brick wall limiters. There's envelope shapers, which are like a transient designer. You got your gates limiters. Maximizer, that's kind of a harmonics type thing, and probably a peak elimination. Razor squasher, tube compressor, vintage compressor. So vintage compressor is probably going to be very similar to, let's say, looks like they're kind of pushing a Neve compressor on that one. What I'm getting at is you could buy a DAW system and not buy any plugins, and you have a plethora of stuff that sounds great and amazing, all built into the system, and it's not a necessity to go, buy whatever everybody else is using. There's plenty of stuff here. Peak elimination. Does the GUI look great? No, it doesn't look great. That's probably one of the biggest things that you could be like, well, I want something that has a little bit more control or something like that on it. But if we go to Studio Course, this has all the controls you could ever use. And let's pull up something that I would use. So, these two plugins do similar things, sound in the same range, but the interface is totally different. And so can you get away with this? I use this all the time. There's certain things that I use this for, and there's certain things I use this for, but they're all in the same wheelhouse, if you will. Another thing I'll say is in Nuendo or Cubase, they even have an area called channel strip. And in the channel strip, which is built into the channel, you could have a standard compressor, you could have a tube compressor, you could have a vintage compressor, which again, kind of pushing the Neve look there. So, you are not alone when it comes to any of this stuff. Some of it's built in here. There's a whole saturation circuit. And there's 3 different types to choose from. DS or envelope shaper, limiter, all built into the channel. You can flip back to your EQ. But now, as I was saying, I have stuff in this program is actually by the type. So if I want to find the course, I have to go to modulation, and then I have all sorts of different things in here to go for. Or I could just type in Studio Course, and there it is. It will come up. So is there some truth to you might want 1176 plugin? Yeah, maybe, because that's the number one used compressor in the world that to do stuff. However, is it a necessity when you first start out that you have to get these tools? No, there's plenty of amazing tools that are in Nuendo and Cubase and your other DAWs. Now, the other thing I'll also say is Nuendo and Cubase specifically is most of their plugins, if not all, if it's a mono source, you just pull it up, it's a mono plugin. If it's a stereo source, it's a stereo plugin. If you pull up a 5.1, it's a 5.1 plugin. So a lot of these plugins that you're getting from other places, third parties like SSL and all this stuff, they're not doing surround. They're not doing these multi-format type channels. So if you buy 1176, it's mono or stereo, and that's it. You ain't getting anything else. So some of the built-in plugins for Nuendo is just really great, and it morphs to whatever channel settings you have. So another thing I wanted to mention is usage of plugins. And not all the time do you have to go crazy. Like, you'll see people mixing and they'll have like 8 plugins on every channel, and they're doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And, there's compression on everything, and they're just, it's a necessity the way they do stuff. Well, the one thing I'll tell you is if you record stuff correctly and you get it sounding great on the way in, and while you're on the way in, you're using the analog gear with compression, EQ, mic pre's, all that stuff. You're getting it good on the way in and it's finished on the way in, then you don't have to do much in the box and you don't need 8 channels of plugins and 8 instances of stuff going on. So here's a perfect example. If you look at this screen, we have drums, we have snare rolls, we have some Middle Eastern drums, we have multiple bass tracks, we have keyboards, virtual, sound effects keyboards. We have tons of little electric guitar things. I'll blow some of this up here. Just little pieces here and there, right? And then we have piano, little string here, all these little tiny things going on, right? And some of this was imported and some of this was recorded here. But look at our track count. We're at 86 tracks of audio. Probably, I don't know, 5 virtual instruments and 80 tracks of audio. And then I have, somewhere around 11 effect channels. And if we look over at the plugin usage, which is in blue here, I have compressor on kick and snare, reverb, which is an effect send on the drums, nothing else, snare roll, some effect sends, nothing else. And now we're starting to get into 1176s, low bass harmonic generator, not for distortion, but to extend the low end. And we got some distortion, guitar rig distortion. We have a limiter. No reverbs on these because a lot of this stuff is electronic, has reverb or textures built in already. We have a piano that I'm using, an Alicia compressor. That's kind of my compressor choice for pianos. Everything else sounds too distorted to me. We have a special. This is a dynamic EQ. It's almost like a compressor in each of the bands. And so I use that for problem issues. We have a bunch of PRS guitar amplifier plugins, which are really cool. Sound great, just amazing. And I'm not even sure, that might be a Waves plugin. I'm not really sure where that's from, but I own it and I have it. I have so many plugins I can't keep track. Okay, so now we're looking at a few other little pianos. Got a few compressors here and there, some strings, and then boom, we hit strings, cellos. Now we are massively using universal audio. I'm using the Legacies. The Legacies, back in the day, they weren't able to approximate or sample the transformers in and out of the box. They only had the technology to do everything inside the box. And so this is a cleaner representation of a 1176. It doesn't have the mojo, if you will, of transformers in the circuit. I actually prefer it. Now, if I bought the regular ones that had all that, which I did have the opportunity to, I was like, why would I bother? I'm mixing into this stuff. So if I need more EQ, then I just turn it up. If I had the other ones that are going to dull out my sound a little bit, okay, then I'll just brighten it up on the EQ. Like, it doesn't really matter, but why pay for something when I actually like the sound of this anyways? And I could actually EQ and get everything going and then put my compression on, and it sounds like I'm just compressed and I didn't lose any of my EQ. That's what's great about this. So for me, that's the way to do it. If I had the other ones that are going to dull out the sound and stuff, then I'm going to put all that stuff on first and then EQ later. So to get it to where I want it to go, which would be true for all your bus compression, stuff like that, which we'll get there. I'll show you. So all the cellos, very dynamic instrument that needs compression like crazy. And then all of a sudden we get to our vocal tracks. And what do I have? Well, I got effects, I got delay, I got some special delays and things going on here. But Yeah, got 1176 across the board. This was one of my projects that there were so many 1176s that it would run out of DSP on my UAD system, and so I just upgraded my UAD system because when it would air out, it wouldn't tell you which one that turned off, so you had no idea. There's no way to find out, and so I was like, well, I'll just get more DSP, and then I don't have to worry about it. And so now everything opens up, everything's great. So let's look at my effects channels. I got a reverb for drums. I got reverb for a longer reverb for keyboards, stuff like that. I got a shorter reverb for all my guitars and things like that. I have mono delays for guitars that can be panned in a way that the guitar is already panned. And so, in other words, like if I have a left-leaning guitar, I'm going to do a right delay. If I have a right-leaning guitar, I'm going to do a left delay, stuff like that. I have a stereo delay for guitar solos. I have this is a special effect that we were talking about, another special effect. Then I have a standard delay for my vocals, that's stereo. I have the Dream Verb here, and then I got a few ROMs, which are special effect reverbs and stuff, spacey. And then look at my stereo bus. There's nothing there. I don't need to crush it. I don't need to go crazy. I don't need to, do some crazy stuff. Now, this is not an official mix yet. This is just the start of a mix, and when you have this many channels, you kind of have to rein it in. But will I probably have something on the master bus? Yeah, at some point. But as I've spoken a few times before, at this point, the mix has already started. I'm not going to put a CLA, whatever it's called, mix down or something like that. It's a special like compressor, like bus mixer, because that's just going to mangle up the mix. It's not going to sound right. What I can do, though, is I could use something like a iron plugin, or I have a real iron sitting right in front of me right here. That I could put on there after the fact and dial it into whatever I want. It's going to sound great. The CLA stuff, you have to like mix into it to get it to sound great. And it will if you mix into it. If you're planning on the way, which is how he works. He plans on the way. He'll crank up like 10 dB on distorted guitars, and it hits a compressor a certain way, and it kind of dulls them out. And, there's all these kind of dynamic things going on. But if you like mixing and then you just want to turn something on at the end, you need something more like an iron compressor or something like that. That is very Fairchildish, and you could really dial that in. And you don't feel like you just destroyed your mix. You feel like now you're entertaining your mix a little bit and moving it in a different direction that you want to. In all reality, I have too many plugins. And sometimes I want to pare it down, but they keep giving me new plugins. And honestly, my flavors change and my taste changes over time. And so I gravitate to different things at different times in my career. In fact, I'm ready to start a whole new template in my DAW system with all sorts of new goodies I got. I too always want to keep learning and trying new things. The faster our computers get, the more the companies are just relying on our computer DSP instead of separate DSP farms. Even though UAD is starting to have native plugins, ones without DSP, I still just bought an Octo Satellite DSP unit recently, and at this moment, I have 13 DSP engines for my UAD plugins. I used to max out when I only had 5. The one key factor in having external DSP is that it is a one-time buy, which means you could use your computer for a lot longer than upgrading it all the time. In any case, you're going to pay for that DSP via a new computer or an external DSP. It just becomes mutually exclusive if you have a separate DSP rig. So Waves, Plugin Alliance, UAD, SSL, Lexicon, it's all up to you. For more information about boutique gear, please go to purewaveaudio.com, and for expert education on the physics of sound, gear selection, building a studio, acoustics, and everything you want to know about selecting and recording a drum kit, check out thestudioedge.com. Thank you for your support, and have a great day.